Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all my non cisgendered brick buddies, welcome to PJ Builds Bricks. Hello, my friends. It's another glorious day out here on the build surface. The sky is blue, all the leaves are green, the sun's as warmed as a baked potato, and I really think it's going to be a spadoinkle day. Unless, of course, you have allergies, because the pollen is also really thick today, in which case you can't breathe. So I would like to go out and say this video is partially sponsored by antihistamines. Yes, antihistamines. The only way we can breathe in the springtime. Anyway, we left off last week having built the system that holds the game cartridge in place. That's this guy right here, right? Cool. Now, part of this system that I kept mentioning last week is the 72-pin connector. And this 72-pin connector would sit right about here, right at the very end of the game cartridge holder piece. I don't really know the technical term. I should probably have found that out. But anyway, this is what held the cartridge there. So, if you didn't have it hooked into the 72-pin connector, you went like that, cartridge falls out. Not good. So this sat about here. It was probably not too much different from the size that you see on the Nintendo right here. Probably about yay wide, yay thick. But what exactly is it? Well, first of all, in order to keep things really confusing and really like nerd speaky-ish, the reason they called it a 72-pin connector was because it had 72 pins. These pins weren't really anything too fancy, just little strips of gold metal. That's it. And the 72-pin connector sat like that. It kind of looked like a sandwich. And on the game cartridge, you had a flat board, and on each side of that board, you had one gold piece on top, one gold piece on the bottom. And that just went right into the connector like that. Really simple design. And these pins were responsible for grabbing electrical signals from the game cartridge and transporting those to the motherboard and chipset to be translated onto the TV. And the motherboard and chipset actually sat underneath the game cartridge holder right there. Another way to explain it would kind of be like, imagine a taco. No, no, not that taco. Yeah, the food taco. There you go. Yeah, perfect taco. So imagine a taco, right? Your taco is going to be the game cartridge, and your teeth is going to be that 72-pin connector. Now, your teeth are going to chew that taco into much smaller pieces. We'll just call them bits and bytes. And this separates the game information into parts that are usable by the system. The food is then going to go down your throat to your stomach. And in this case, your stomach is going to function like a motherboard and chipset. And then the same way that your stomach is going to take food and turn it into usable food for your body, the motherboard and chipset can turn that data into something useful, like, say, Mario running across the TV screen, or that horrible, horrible game over scene that I've seen one too many times. Now, moving on to what exactly made that all work. Well, the brains of it, as I said, were right down there. And even though the NES had the look of an entertainment piece to fit in with your stereo rack, etc., it was still a computer at its heart. And the good folks over at nesdev.org, Ars Technica, they've all done a much, much, much deeper dive than I could possibly hope to give you, all about chips and pins and what each pin's purpose was and wiring diagrams. I could never cover that in just a few minutes. And also, I'm not a tech vlog. I'm a Lego building vlog. So there's that. If you want to see tech, go check that out. So what I'm going to do is try to give you the gist of it without going too much into like heavy duty geek speak. Now, the CPU itself was produced by a company called Ricoh. And for the American version, that chip, the 2A03 chip, as it was called, clocked in at 1.79 megahertz and had access to 2 kilobytes of RAM. That's right, 2 kilobytes. Yeah. The PAL version that was used overseas was slightly different. Kind of think of the way DVDs are separated into NTSC, PAL, different regions. We had that for Nintendo. Still kind of good on today. Now, this 2A03 chip was able to handle 8 bits of data at a time, which is why the NES is referred to as an 8-bit system, as well as 5 channels of audio. Now, in these 5 audio channels were 2 pulse wave channels, and those are responsible for handling melodies, a triangle wave channel, which was used for bassline, and a noise channel that was used for percussion. That wasn't obviously restricted to that, but that's just what they were commonly used for. The fifth channel was a sample channel that was used for more complex sounds. And this channel wasn't really used too much in the beginning days of the NES as it took up way too much memory to use, so it wasn't really feasible. But in the later years, it was used for things such as I think one of the examples I saw was the bongos on Super Mario 3, if you've ever played that. Um, and what was really cool was this whole five channel setup actually inspired an entire subgenre of music. It's called chiptunes. And probably the best known band in the chiptune genre is Anamanaguchi. Now, if you're a fan of the movie Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, they did the music for Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, as well as the video game Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So it's a really neat subgenre. I suggest you guys check it out if you get a chance. There's a lot of talented bands that do some pretty interesting things with it. Now, the graphics, those were provided by a separate chip, a Ricoh 2CO2 processor known as the Picture Processing Unit, or the PPU. And this had 2 kilobytes of RAM on board, but it also had access to an additional 265 bytes of RAM called the Object Attribute Memory. And this could house up to 64 sprites. And finally, it had 28 bytes of RAM assigned to the system's color palette of 54 usable colors. Now, I just used the term sprite, but what is that? Sprite, that's a sprite. It's just a general term for anything you see on the screen that's not part of the background. So Mario's, Goombas, Koopa Troopas, Pikachu, anything that's basically a character or something you can interact with on the screen is considered a sprite. And if you've ever been playing your NES and noticed that the game lags a little bit when there's a lot going on the screen, think of like Link being attacked by a bunch of chickens on the Super Nintendo, it's because the Nintendo hit that 64 sprite limit. So it was, or at least was approaching 64 sprites. So it was really having trouble keeping up with rendering and keeping those sprites active on the screen and keeping everybody moving. It was at its capacity of memory. So I know I just threw a lot out there to understand, but to give you an idea of how small the memory on this thing was, it's generally accepted that one piece of paper, regular 8x10 piece of paper, is somewhere between 2 to 2.5 kilobytes. 1 kilobyte is 1,000 bytes. So the CPU itself had about one piece of paper. The PPU had one piece of paper as well. The object attribute memory had about this much on it. Say, obviously not the scale, but we'll call this about 1/7 the size of a piece of paper. And then, to go even further, the PPU itself, the picture processing unit, had, we'll say, that much. Wasn't much on there. You know, compare that with your Nintendo Switch that's got 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the NES had, just for ease of math sakes, of course, I added all the RAM together, and we'll say the NES has 4.5 kilobytes of total RAM. If 1,000 kilobytes is 1 megabyte, 1,000 megabytes is 1 gigabyte, then this puts the NES at about 0.000001125%, just a fraction of a percent of the processing power of the Switch. But for 1983, this kind of memory was just like, poof. It's crazy how much technology has progressed since then. Anyway, now that your brains are all full of new information, I got my build beverage right here. This week it's Bundaberg root beer from Australia. And it says to please tip the bottle before opening, because I've inverted that there. Pull out and then up. That made a fun sound. It's really good. Tastes kind of like a sarsaparilla, molasses. Definitely love my build beverages. Anyway, cheers. And now, before we get to the world-famous build surface, a word from our sponsors.
Attention. Did you work, live, or play at the Mushroom Kingdom at any point between 1983 and 2007? Higher than acceptable levels of lead in Mushroom Kingdom pipes leading in and out of Toad Town have been linked to serious health problems, including stunted growth, heads shaped like mushroom caps, and speech patterns that sound like screaming, and many other health concerns. If you have been exposed to these higher than normal lead levels, the Toad Town Justice Act of 2023 may make it possible for you to recover a significant settlement. Even if you were previously denied compensation, you may still be eligible to receive a substantial payment. The lead levels you were exposed to may be the source of why you and many other Toad Town residents are mistaken for mushrooms, leading to serious health problems and even accidental ingestion by one of the Mario brothers. Call Toad, Toad, and Toad Associates right now, as you may be entitled to substantial compensation for you and your family. Call 1-555-LEAD-PIPES now. That's 1-555-LEAD-PIPES to get what you rightfully deserve.
All right, and here we are, back on the world famous build surface with bag number 4. Before we get started though, I do want to say that sponsor commercial for Toad Toad and Associates does sound pretty serious. So if you or a family member out there feel you might have been affected by this, please call up Toad Toad and Associates right away. I don't want any of you guys to miss out on any money that you may be owed. Anyway, enough of the serious stuff, back to the fun stuff. Alright, like I said, we're on bag number 4. This bag is going to give me 40 steps and 156 pieces of all different sizes and shapes. And now I ask that everybody just take a deep breath. And relax your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and just enjoy some free ASMR. All right, guys. Well, great job. We finally built bag number 4 with all the 156 pieces. So, cheers to you guys for hanging out and helping me do this. All right. Let's go over what we did today a little bit. We built up the case some more, added basically just one more layer of bricks to it. We put these pieces in right here, and we'll talk about more what these pieces are going to do in the next bag, number 5, because you build a bit more on top of it. And we also built in the ports that take the signal from the Nintendo to your TV. Now, on this side, you had two cables that you had to use. You have your yellow video cable and your red audio cable, and these are called RCA jacks. And you've probably seen them before. Maybe if you have a old Xbox, an old PlayStation, or even an older game system, it would come in basically one wire, and it would split into two on this end, split into two on the other end. One end, of course, goes in here. The other end goes in the other one. Now, you may have also seen the same thing with a third white port. This was just basically so you could handle one channel video and two channels of audio, making for stereo sound. But since Nintendo was a mono system, you only needed one sound output coming out. And whether you use the Y cable or you use two independent cables, it didn't really matter. And trade secret, you can actually use a red cable for the yellow if you needed to. Some people would argue that there would be a decrease in the video. Same if you use a yellow cable for the red, there would be a decrease in audio. Not really noticeable, but if you were to look at it on a wave spectrum, technically, yes, I guess there's a difference, but not a big deal if you switch them up. On the back, however, you had another choice. You could use coaxial cable, which is just the regular cable line that goes into your cable box or directly into your TV. Um, that plugged into here. Now, this doesn't have the screws on it. What this was, it was actually an adapter that you would get. I forget what it was called. It was like a coaxial adapter. There were a couple of names for it. But you would have a wire plugged into here, and it would go out to a box that was probably about that big. It wasn't really big at all. It was gray. You most likely had one. And what would happen is you would take the coax cable from your cable box or from the wall, whatever you wanted to do. You would screw it into the bottom of that little gray box, and the other end was another coax cable, and you would screw that into the back of your TV. And that's how that works. So you could use the coax cable. And here, it's a very, very small switch. You can kind of see the indentation for it. And I really wish they had a way that you could switch it back and forth on this system, because that would have been really cool. But I guess they weren't able to incorporate it into the design. That's all right. But this was a switch that you would use to choose between channels 3 and 4, whichever one you wanted to play it on. So this one you had to choose between a channel. If you use this, you would just change the input on your TV the same way you do nowadays if you're switching to your Switch, PlayStation, etc. Just change the HDMI. And this last port right here, this one is where you would put in your power connector. Plug right into there, go right into the wall. So that is it for today, guys. Again, great job. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I want you to just go ahead and please like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me what you liked and you didn't like about this video, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of. Because as I'm building this, I want you guys to know this channel is just as much your guys' channel as it is my channel too. I'm working on the quality, making it a little bit better. I'm just kind of using the equipment that I got from Walmart. But you know what? I'm going to work hard every day to improve, make it look better, make it sound better, and all those things. I want to do that, guys, for you guys. Last but not least, it's Philly's opening day today, so ring the bell. Get some notifications of when the next videos are popping up, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. And don't forget, socks and Crocs may rhyme, but it is definitely a crime. All right, see you guys next episode. Take care.